Welcome to Tiny Hands, Big Dreams. So we've had a container canopy for about 18 months now, and we've had a bit of experience with it. So we're going to do a bit of a review here for you on whether we think it's worth it or not to bring to an off-grid or homestead environment where you might be considering it. So the first thing to consider is cost.
Yeah, so
That's what it is.
Significant cost. We bought this one, weird scenario, guy on a farm, something, $1,000. Right now they look like they're about $2,000 for the 20 by 20, and they're sized by your container size.
There's 20 by 20, there's 40 by 40, and then I think there's 40 by 20, which is then like a 40-foot container and a 20-foot opening, I think.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of different options. There's a bunch of different qualities.
They're pretty much all made in China.
Yep.
They're all pretty similar. We got the 20 by 20. That's what was available. It fit our container. So that's what we're going to speak to.
Yep. So the first thing is weight. Now, this, I guess we have to sort of preface this. If you don't know, we're in southern Ecuador. We moved all of our belongings in said container from the US here, where there are mosquitoes.
Yeah. So
have to put up with that.
Yeah.
So weight was a big consideration for us. It may not be for you if you're just going to get it delivered and put it up. You may not need to worry about that. If you're going to move it somewhere.
Yeah, the first adventure we went to buy it, the guy had a forklift. He set it in the trailer. Great, we're out. We get home, it's stuck in the trailer. We can't lift it. Oh. So now we have to unload. We called it the coffin, which is the crate that it comes in. It says it's 210 kilograms.
Yep.
460 pounds maybe.
Could have sworn it was heavier.
It seemed heavier.
It's also an impossible physical thing to you can't grab it.
It's like a giant, huge coffin of steel. So we had to open it and then unload it to move the crate to put it back in. And
which is when we realized that if you unpack it, you will never get it packed all back in its little box.
There's an exact way all these little pieces of pipe and things and stuff fits in there. We just, no matter how many times we tried, we couldn't figure it out again. So when we repacked it, we had to leave the cover, the big white cover, out.
So just something to know. If
yeah.
You're gonna, like, we wanted to look through it, make sure all the pieces were in it, which was a great idea, except that then you just have pieces on the ground.
Well, there was also water. It had been sitting outside, and water had gotten in and puddled, and it caused a little bit of rust. It was nothing of consequence, it turns out.
It was really just rust to the box itself.
And the instructions, which were soaked in a bag.
Yeah. So that was a fun experience. So let's see. Now it is designed for 2 containers. You'll see that on every picture, every website, everything. I don't know. We just decided it's okay. We have 1 container. It'll be fine. We'll figure it out. Can't be that hard.
We're on a hill. Getting spot for 1 container is hard enough. Getting spot for 2 containers, not here. It's not going to happen. Also,
we didn't need to. We didn't have.
We're not importing 2. We're not buying 2. Like, we're going to have 1 container. So we faked it, and we built 3 posts and a piece of steel on top to act like a second container for mounting. And there's a little bit of work. I mean, we had to dig and put posts in concrete. And the only thing that we found out that why that didn't work was the container flexes down when it's up like that. So
the canopy.
The canopy. So it actually, without the container to stabilize it, wants to push the poles out slightly, which would break their foundations. So we put some ropes between just to hold some tension. I'm going to change them out with some thin cable, just so when like wind gusts hit it, it doesn't flex and loosen its mountings. But not a big deal.
And you did have to do a few modifications to some of the brackets just to make them work not on a container.
Yeah, I was able to just modify the brackets and reuse them to clamp to the piece of steel that I made.
So as part of that, the assembly is... So the assembly is the biggest part of this. You can buy it, it's heavy, whatever, it's fine. We were looking online for how do you put this together? There was nothing.
Aircrete Harry. We're going to shout out to Aircrete Harry and your
bone to pick with you.
Yeah, great videos, thanks. We appreciate it. You say in your instructions, oh, just pull your RV under and stand on your RV and put it up. Dude,
An RV?
we can't bring an RV. We don't have an RV. We're not allowed to import an RV. So
It's really tall.
it's really tall.
It looks tall in pictures. It looks much taller when you're realizing you have to reach the top of it.
Yeah, and you're 15 feet off the ground on a shaky ladder trying to assemble pipes and bang them together, put them together with ratchet straps and squeeze them because you can't move your arms quickly because you're way up in the air and the ladder's doing this.
I like how you say you were on a ladder. That's only part of it. You were on 2 tables stacked on top of each other. 2 plastic folding tables stacked on top of each other, ratchet strapped together with a ladder on top of that.
Stabilized by my wife. Okay, so the risk of death is maybe the biggest reason why we maybe wouldn't do this again. Simply getting it up. If you can get a scissor lift where you're at and rent it for a couple days and just go up, and it's great.
If you have an RV to drive under.
If you have an RV, okay.
Otherwise, it's...
Otherwise, you have a serious technical problem of how the heck do you get up there? That's a real problem.
It was really difficult.
And that's why you see these in industrial yards and they park excavators and equipment under them. Well, they have equipment to just get up there and like assemble this. It's not a big deal.
Yeah. It was rough.
Yeah. Yeah.
So part of that is the instructions. Yes, ours were wet. But even without that, they were not ideal. They were Chinglish at best.
English. We took them out. We photographed them as best we could. Then we looked up online about like how does it go together. In reality,
it's pretty easy.
Once you start to understand like, oh, a cross goes to a thing, goes to a thing. Okay, rinse and repeat. You get the bolts in. You gotta tweak stuff a little bit to get the bolts in and to get the next one.
You had to ratchet some of them. They just didn't. The bolt holes didn't want to line up perfect.
Yeah, then the pieces would get like this, and you'd have to like squeeze it to pop the next one. Minor.
Took a bit of finagling, but it wasn't part wasn't particularly hard.
Nothing needed really modified. So at least with this brand, and like I said, every time you look, there's a different batch of brands. They all come out of China.
Anything else about assembly?
No, really, just it was really tall.
I mean, we keep saying that, but it's really tall. Doesn't look like it from here, maybe, but it's really tall. It involves, and it's heavy. Each piece is pretty heavy when you're having to hold it up in the air. That was my job, was to get on top of the container and hold the pieces from one side while he like awkward.
Right, we would like hoist one of the arches up, and then she would hold it on the container, and then we would lift up the other side as I climbed the ladder, and then.
So it's heavy when you're trying to hold only from one end and keep it all from falling.
And it's trying to. And then, and then I would get the end, and then she would continue holding it, and then I would come and I'd get the connecting bars, then it's okay, and you move on. And while you're up there, bolting it, don't forget the duct tape, or you will have to go back, and whatever crazy thing you've assembled to get up that high, to every single connection again, and wrap every junction with duct tape, or the little sharp edge will abrade and pop holes in your covering.
Which would suck if you get through all that, and then you have holes, and it's a disaster. So. Yeah. As it starts to rain, we can talk about, so a big purpose of this is, well, there's 2 for us. There was having somewhere with some shade and also having rain protection for a working space, a storage space. Technically it works for straight falling rain.
It does, and it fails on both points only for the fact of it is so tall that even the slightest angle of the sun or the slightest angle of the rain brings it into the container probably halfway under the opening, which negates half your space now. And then you get into, if it's a little bit of a breeze, most everything underneath is getting wet.
Yep. It's blown all the way through the entire canopy before. It's not all the time, but it's not a perfect answer. Which gets into if you can orient your container to block the wind. To the wind.
Your predominant wind. That would be better. We didn't have that option.
We tried.
We're on a hill. There was container goes here. Canopy goes here. Unfortunately, the wind tunnels through it.
It's just what that was for us.
Yeah.
So I think that's something to consider is if you can orient it better.
Yeah.
Then I think you'll have a much better time with the wind, the rain. And that was the main issue with it that we had.
That's the main issue.
Cleaning. It's gross.
You could get up there with a long, and I have a long pole I use for the solar panels, except I put solar panels there and I sort of block it, so I can't really get up there to do anything about it, so it gets gross. The other side, I'm on a hill, so I can't put a ladder, so it's just gross too. That's our situation, but if you're doing a similar one container thing, that's what it is. We're gonna have to pause for rain. All right, we had to pause for the rain. The phone doesn't like getting wet. So assembling it is a big deal. 2 people. You must have 2 people.
At minimum.
Full time.
I mean, we had 2.5.
Not just helping, nothing. It is a 2-person minimum job.
Yep.
Putting the cover on, 3 is good. 3 is good because one person can be there with a pokey pole trying to like push it up and drag it across.
That was a little tricky. It was getting the cover on without damaging it was just awkward.
Yeah, you sort of throw it, and then we had a little pole with a rounded end, and we just sort of like.
Yeah, there's no instructions on putting it on. There's just
install the cover.
Install. You're like, how do you install this?
And then once you get it up there, there's a bar that goes through the bottom, and then straps that pull it tight. And they say to pull it snug, let it sit a couple weeks in the sun, and then tighten it again. Okay, that's pretty easy. And that's where it's been.
And it hasn't tried to fly away. Nothing's happened.
No, I've retorqued the bolts at the container. They've settled a bit. I've retorqued the other bolts where it attaches to the steel. That's now all snug. We've had some pretty crazy wind, and it stayed. So it wins on that.
All right. So the
big question: would we buy it again,
or should you buy it?
We
have a bit of a different situation than some people will.
We were packing a container like a seed to take to a faraway place in like away from civilization, and then like open up a full like running off-grid homestead with power and things and a work area. Like we wanted it to come with us. We wanted the security of we already had it in a box
that we could put together. We didn't need to hire someone to build something. All of that. Now we could have. I'm not sure. I think in our situation, especially the fact that we got it for such a good deal, we would do it again. Like in retrospect, I still think we would have done it.
At $1,000, yes.
At $2,000,
$2,000, pretty common around here. They just take some tube steel and sink it in concrete and put some bars, and then they throw a sheet metal roof over it.
Yeah.
Has its benefits.
Now, for most people, that's probably not an option because that is likely more expensive in the States to have something like that put together.
Unless you
also then have a
cutting,
structure.
Welding, painting.
Well, you also have a structure, which permitting, we don't have to deal with permitting, but permitting may be a problem with a structure.
It can be.
This probably gets around all of that.
Yeah, it mounts to the container, and containers have their own special sort of like exemption a lot of times. If that's an issue in your area, check into it. Permanent structures means you put poles in the ground, and that could be a deal killer. So all of a sudden, this looks wickedly better.
Yep.
But so one of the modifications we talked about, the front of it is open, and we talked about doing like a skirt that's like sort of
just a cover,
like a hat brim or a baseball cap brim. Yeah, some have a thing that comes down, because when the rain comes in at like 16 or 18 or whatever, 20 feet,
tall.
I don't know. The rain starts up there. By the time it makes it over to you, even a slight angle. But if we could block that, if we could add a couple of bars and a piece of plastic, we could gain back a lot of dry space. That would have been a huge thing.
Still may end up doing that one day. For now, it's really windy and raining, and you go run down. Then you throw some stuff over the tables that you've been working on, and you make do.
Sheet of plastic. Yeah, it's what that is.
Yeah. So honestly, like I can't say I wouldn't recommend it.
Depends on your situation.
It really
does. Where you're at, what you're doing.
I think that honestly, if we had just known some of these things, it would have been easier to put together. We wouldn't have just stared at it for a long time.
We would have brought an RV.
Yeah. Okay, well. But we wouldn't have we stared at it for a long time. Like, well, we really need to put that up. Well, we really need to do that. I don't know how to start that.
If you can't solve the problem of getting up in the air to assemble chunks of steel over your head, that may be the deciding factor right
if that's
there.
something you don't want to do, you don't have the ability to do, you don't have enough people to do.
I'm not really afraid of heights. It scared the schnorgels out of me. Being up on I moved so slow. Every movement she's done there, just trying to hang on, and the whole thing's like, could we have had a better setup? Yes. Could we have like put scaffolding up?
Didn't have the money or the time.
We had nothing.
No, we made do with what we had, and it worked fine. But I think that's something important to know. I probably wildly underestimated, one, how tall it was, and two, how heavy the pieces were going to be, that we had to get that high up.
Assembled.
So that's just, so that's just something to think about. I don't think it's a deal breaker. It's just something to consider. And if that's something that doesn't work for you, then that's probably not the best option.
Yeah, and they say you get like 10 years out of the covering, but every time I see a brand of one, the brand is gone, and there's replaced by a new unknown Chinese brand name that looks exactly the same, but is a different company. So you might be able to get a replacement covering.
And it might fit. Not honestly not sure about that one.
Yeah. So that's what that is.
Yeah.
It
Something to consider too. It works.
works.
I'm glad we have it.
I'm very glad we have it. We could have also assembled just a steel or even the fiberglass clear roof. Letting in the light is nice.
Yep.
It does let some light through. Even as dirty as it is, a steel roof is much darker underneath. I don't know. But that's what it is. That's what it does. It's serving us well. We're going to continue to use it.
Oh, yeah. Not taking it down. So it's all just about, looking at the information that we've tried to present of how it realistically works, how it goes together. There was nothing on the internet when we looked.
There's Aircrete Harry, and then there's companies selling it, showing trucks and excavators parked under them.
That's great. Didn't see people without an RV putting it together.
Didn't see, what if you only have one container?
Yeah. So, we wanted to just kind of share, that's actually how we did it. It worked with the two of us in one container, but it wasn't easy.
We managed to accomplish it.
So maybe that'll give a little bit of information to you if it's something you're considering for your property. Sway you one way or the other. And if you have any questions, put them in the comments. We're happy to help as much as we can. Like, subscribe, all those things.
Follow us.
We put out a good bit of homestead, off-grid, different information. Chris does a lot of the equipment stuff.
Stuff about Ecuador, stuff about you just want to leave the U.S. and move to paradise. What's involved with that? Well, we're going to show you.
Yep, how to off-grid.
How to off-grid.
So, yeah,
all right.
Stick around.
Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.